This is how it works. CIA teaches us that taking control of a room actually starts before you ever step into the room in the first place. Dominance isn't gained during a conversation. It's gained from the moment that you enter the space where other conversations are happening. You have to control the tempo, the pace, the volume, the vocabulary that you actually use. It's not about trying to fit into what other people are already saying or doing in the room. It's about creating a whole new frame that actually attracts their attention to you. Culturally, we've all learned that if we want to belong, if we want to be accepted, we have to start using the same language that other people use. We have to wear the same clothes that other people wear. We have to have the same hairstyles. We have to have the same brand names. We have to show up at the same time that other people show up. In reality, what you're doing is subconsciously subordinating yourself to the desires of the group, meaning you are following the frame that the group or that someone else has set. Instead, what you want to do is come into a room with your own frame, a frame that is in competition with and distinctly different from whatever existing frame is inside the room. The reason this works is because most people don't have a plan. They don't have an outcome. They don't have a desire in mind when they show up to a board meeting or a staff meeting or even a first date. So as a result, they end up doing something called reactive framing, which means they're cobbling together some sort of structure or ideas about what they want from the event after they arrive. That's what creates so much friction, so much debate, so much discomfort and obvious awkwardness whenever you're around people that don't have a plan. Everyone knows there is no plan, but nobody wants to call it out. You've had this happen at work. You've had this happen around the dinner table. You've had this happen on the first date, the second date, the 25th date, your 15th wedding anniversary. You come together and you look at each other awkwardly because nobody really has a plan what they're trying to get out of this time together. That's called a reactive frame. You want to create an active frame, a deliberate frame. You want to control the frame before you even walk into the room, because subconsciously that gives everybody an attractive target to follow. It creates a very clear leadership dynamic without you even having to speak. You do this by picking the time that you're going to meet. You do this by picking the place where you're going to meet. You do this by already knowing when the meeting, the date, the event will end. You know it even before anybody else in the room knows it. The reason that's so powerful is because even though they don't know when the meeting will end, they know that you do, and they will follow you. And when you say it's over, they will leave. When you say the date ends, he or she will go home. I don't need you to be aggressive. I don't need you to be assertive. I don't need you to be loud. These are very small things that get picked up by the subconscious of everybody else around you. And I've seen them work on powerful men. I've seen them work on scared men, broken men, angry men. I've seen them work on women who were interested in me as much as women who had no interest in me at all. Because when it comes down to it, a frame is really about survival. And all human beings are attracted to the thing that enhances or increases their sense of survival. The idea of survival is what actually takes us to the second point in this tactic. Not only do you want to prepare the frame before you even enter the room, but once you enter the room, you want to be extremely consistent with the frame that you create, because sustainability equals survivability, and survivability makes people feel secure. That's why so many people are struggling in the world we live in right now. They feel insecure because of so much instability. All the conflicts overseas, the economy here in the United States, the changing value of our currency. There are so many factors that cause instability, and that instability makes us feel insecure because we all know there is inconsistency in each of these arenas, whether it's international conflict or the economy or the job market. So it's not about creating the most dominant frame. It's not about creating the most aggressive or assertive frame. It's about creating the most stable frame. Think about it for yourself. If you had to pick between a wooden table with 4 legs or a marble table with 3 legs, what would you most likely choose for yourself? No doubt you would look at the marble table and think to yourself, that table looks much more beautiful. That table looks much more attractive. But then you would also realize that it's a very heavy table because it's made of stone. If you haven't discovered your natural born spy skills, then somebody else may be using theirs, against you. CIA teaches us there are only three types of people: those who manipulate, those who motivate, and those who are being controlled by one of the other two. I built a 3-minute CIA-style quiz designed to help you unlock your secret psychological advantage and identify your biggest blind spot. This quiz will help you weaponize your natural gift and use it to get ahead of 99% of people in power, money, and purpose. Click on the first link in the description below or scan the QR code on your screen right now to take the test. I want you to discover your hidden spy skill and use it before someone else uses theirs against you. And it has to balance all that weight on just 3 legs. So if somebody bumps into it the wrong way or leans on it the wrong way, the whole thing is going to come crashing down. Where a wooden table may not be so attractive at first sight, but when you look at the 4 legs and you think about the stability, now you have no problems sitting on that table, leaning on that table, inviting people to sit and join you for a meal around that table. Clearly, the stability of the table becomes more attractive than the material of the table itself. The same thing is true when people gather in a room. They're looking for the most stable, the most consistent, the most secure frame in the room, and they will follow that frame. The way that you present yourself as a stable 4-legged table is actually counterintuitive to what most of us have learned in college, on the job, and in the dating arena. Rather than being the person who talks the most, you actually want to be the person who talks the least. The person who is silent is the person who really controls a room, because that silent person gets to absorb all the information happening in the room. Who's talking, what they're talking about, what they're saying. The person who's quiet is the person who can see verbal and nonverbal cues that are showing dominance and competition between the different people in the meeting. Being in control of the frame doesn't mean you're speaking the most. It actually means you're speaking the least. And when you speak in statements, not questions. Again, this is totally counterintuitive. Most of us believe that if we ask questions, we're somehow more attractive, we're less threatening. People want to be around us because we make them feel interesting. That's not completely false, but when you're trying to control a room, it's the wrong strategy. When you're trying to control a room, you want to be the person who speaks in statements, because statements offer finality. Statements offer certainty. Statements are also very easy for the human brain to process quickly. When somebody asks you a question, your brain is forced to process not only the question itself, but multiple possible answers, and it has to decide whether or not it should even share the answer with you. So all of a sudden you can see that there's a great deal of processing that has to happen nearly instantaneously when someone's trying to answer a question. Instead, when you make a statement, there's no processing involved. Nobody has to think about answers. Nobody has to decide whether or not they'll filter their response. All they have to do is internally decide whether they agree or disagree with your statement. So to make yourself the most attractive and most stable frame in a conversation, thereby taking control of the room, all you really have to do is speak infrequently and speak in statements. 2 things that are wildly simple and frequently overlooked. The last part to understanding this tactic is understanding that frames are in constant competition. They're dynamic and ever-changing. They're not static and immovable. For example, if you're on a date, whether it's your first date or whether it's your 500th date, both partners are showing up with a frame in mind. Maybe it's a reactive frame, maybe it's an intentional frame. Maybe she's stressed out, maybe he's needy, maybe she's distracted, maybe he's horny. Either way, you've got 2 very different frames that are walking in competition. Now, with what you've already learned here today, you know that before you ever walk into that date, you want to have already preloaded what your frame will be. You want to know your outcome. You want to know your desire. You want to know your target start time, end time, and what you're going to talk about before you ever walk in. As soon as you present that frame inside that date, the second phase of the tactic takes over, and you appear cool, confident, stable, consistent, and secure, which makes the other person, no matter what frame they're coming from, very attracted to your frame subconsciously. Because whether they're dreamy or horny, they're coming in and they're finding that you are very stable and steady. You set the tone, you set the pace, you set the conversation, you set the tempo. You're giving directions, where we eat, when we start, what we talk about, and that is incredibly comforting to everybody because that frame of stability is very much like that four-legged table, that thing that we trust. When you do the first two steps of this tactic correctly, the third factor, the competition between the frames, becomes irrelevant because the most stable, consistent frame is the one that wins over time, because all of the other frames simply collapse. They run out of energy, they run out of support, or they're killed by the other frames in the room, leaving only one behind. This is a critical element to understanding how you control a room. Because in a room of 2, 20, or 50, there are so many different frames that they're all competing and killing each other. So rather than being one of the frames that spends your energy fighting, you want to conserve your energy and wait. Let all the other ideals, all the other reactions, all the other emotions play out. Because at the end of it all, they will see that you sit there unchanged, sturdy, stable, quiet, and confident, making statements instead of asking questions. You want to let all the chaos, all the conflict, all the competition play out, and you will be the source of stability. You will be the safe haven that everybody comes back to. We call that gravitas. Gravitas pulls people to you even if they don't know that's what's happening. That's the power of being that safe haven. That's the power of being the quiet, strong person in a room full of noisy, scared people. You already know all of this is true because you've seen it happen in your own life. You've noticed quiet people in the room. You've noticed the person who doesn't speak very often. You've noticed the person who doesn't ask a lot of questions. You've been attracted to the person who doesn't give in to the drama. You've been attracted to the person who doesn't play in with the conflict and the rivalry. You have befriended, you have sought out guidance from, you have collaborated with the person that looks like they're being overlooked by everyone, when in fact, they're gaining everyone's attention. That is controlling the frame. That's the tactic that CIA taught me, that beats warlords and beats dictators and outsmarts presidents and outsmarts clergy and outsmarts parents and outsmarts business executives and all those people who would spend their time talking. Because when you listen, when you're quiet, when you speak in statements, when you control the silence, you control the room. Become that silent, powerful, safe haven to the other person. Watch their reactive frame crumble in the face of your intentional, deliberate frame, your preloaded, premeditated frame. Watch how you achieve your outcomes and you get your desires without the other person even realizing they're following your lead. This is your chance to take control and keep control without having to say